Well, we're doing good and we're going deeper into these episodes. We are in a series. In this series, we are talking about one of the most liberating changes. Liberating is the key word. One of the most liberating changes that you and I can be able to make in our lives so that we can live happily ever after? No, so that we can live a life that is filled with purpose, with fulfillment. In fact, yesterday we talked about fulfillment, which accrues from a life of selflessness, and say that as much as you're going to look for fulfillment from all the other places on the face of the earth, you're not going to find it until you become selfless. Today, let us look at one more advantage that accrues to you when you are selfless. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Life Signatures episodes are brought to you by africanbooks.com, which is an online ebook platform that seeks to broadcast the African Christian voice to the world. As such, they have become a hub for African content, connecting African writers and publishers with a global reading audience. Publishing your books on their site is free and easy, with authors having full control over their content and the price they choose to sell at it. I was personally blown away by the concept that africanbooks.com is coming up with. Things like no content from their site or their app is going to be run on laptops so that people can easily copy. In other words, your content as a writer is restricted from digital multiplication or digital copying, so you remain intact with your information. And the other concept that I got so blown away with was the fact that in some time to come, in due course, africanbooks.com will be starting to announce African Writer of the Year. In other words, there will be competitions in all African countries to figure out who is the best published author. And I also fell in love with the fact that countries can actually compete against each other. We can have African authors going at it after each other, and your book as an author will be reviewed and have some stars and recommended upon that particular platform. The thing is that it's an answer to Amazon.com. You know, with Amazon, what happens? You've got to have an account in the Americas or whatever, or in Europe before you can get paid as an author. But here, the local currency is in play and the local means of getting paid are in play. So to get started, go to africanbooks.com as an author or as a publisher, and even as a reader if you wanted to read your African favorite authors. Enjoy. Thank you so very much for staying tuned on to Life Signatures Radio. We have very many episodes going down, and I am so glad that people all over the world, when I look at my statistics, I see people all over the world. I see people in France, in Greece, in Rwanda, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in the United States of America, people all over the world listening to Life Signatures Radio, and I'm so blessed by that. And I'd like to add you one more thing. Please make sure that you subscribe to this. If you've listened to this and it has done something to you, It has either motivated you, it has inspired you, or it has taught you something, made you to think, and added some bit of value into your life. I am asking you to subscribe to it, and also make sure that you share with as many people as possible who are in your circles. Why? Because if it blesses you, it can also be a blessing to somebody else. So let us go forward today and talk about one of the things that you can be able to gain in your life when you live a life of selflessness. Obviously, selfishness is the opposite of selflessness. And so one of the advantages of being selfless, we discussed yesterday, it is that you get fulfillment. Let me say this, you can go at very big length and depth and heights and whatever, trying to get fulfillment. Fulfillment is not bought. Fulfillment is a byproduct of what you do selflessly. Lord, I need to quote myself. That's very original. Fulfillment, what did I say? Fulfillment is a byproduct of what you get by being selfless. I think that's what I said. The other benefit, I want us to discuss the other benefit of living a life of selflessness. Remember, the key we are talking about here is what is the most liberating change. We're talking about liberation, personal liberation. Some of us were living in free countries, as in free in quotes. Borders are open, borders are free, we're walking around, we can do our businesses and so on and so forth, and yet we are imprisoned. We are imprisoned, and yet there are some people who are living in the Iron Curtain. They're living in restricted areas, and yet they're liberated. What's the key? The key is selflessness at the personal level, at the individual level. What does selflessness bring you? Yesterday we said it brings you fulfillment. Today, selflessness has a benefit of contribution. Did you know, by the way, that we are not going to settle as a human being or as human beings? We will not settle and find peace until we have made a contribution on the face of the earth. Until you make a contribution, I tell you, as a human being, you are not happy. You don't feel human at all. If all you're doing is to get and get and get and get, and there is no contribution on your part, no selfless contribution, nothing that has cost you anything. You don't do it on a daily basis, you don't do it on an occasional basis, you just don't do any kind of contribution in this life. Whether it's contribution to change someone else's life, or whether it's contribution coming out of your gifts and your talents, as long as you're not contributing in this world, you are not gonna be happy. That's a hack. And you can take that to the bank. You see, contribution is one of our main psychological needs. According to Tony Robbins, we have 6 psychological needs. I've talked about these things in these episodes before. We have 6 psychological needs, and one of them is contribution. Others include certainty, variety, growth, love, and so on. But contribution is what makes you human. That's why you can be paid to stay at home and do absolutely nothing, and you run away just to go and try and do something. The human has been created to do stuff. The human has been created to work, predominantly to work. Psychologically, we get our fulfillment, we get our drive, and maybe our thrill when we contribute. And one of the ways that we do this is when we are selfless. Again, let me tell you this. When you're making a contribution that costs you nothing, you feel nothing out of it. I mean, it's over and above, it's out of the overflow. As in, you have $200 million in your account and you give Lawrence $1,000. You feel absolutely nothing about it. There's a way this contribution I'm talking about has gotta cost you something. A story is told of this guy, King David, in the Bible. It says that there's a time he needed to make an offering to God. And there's this guy who had a place where David desired to make that offering. And this guy comes to David and says, I'm going to give it to you for free. and I'm going to make the cows and so on, and I'm going to give you everything that you need for that offering or that sacrifice to be made for free. And David said something very profound. He said, I am not going to give God an offering that cost me nothing. You can't call that a sacrifice if it's cost me nothing. What's my point? My point is that contribution, true contribution, makes you feel something. You needed it, but you stepped out of the way and you gave it to somebody else. That's contribution that comes out of selflessness. And that's one of the changes that we need to make in our lives, to be selfless, to prefer others even to our own heart as compared to preferring ourselves. So it is one of the most fulfilling aspects of life, contribution. It comes out of an authentic spirit or authentic heart of selflessness. It is one of the most fulfilling aspects. You know it. It cost you something, but it blessed somebody else. And when you're doing this, you've got to get some kind of detachment. Let me tell you something that I don't think I like it, but something that happened to me a few years ago. I had this wonderful suit. One suit, actually. It's the only suit I had. Blue in color. I loved it to bits. So out of love, I think, I don't know, but maybe just out of love, I gave it to a relative of mine. Just handed it over to them. And I was so happy in myself. But I was attached to that suit, and I was attached to this relative. A few months later, maybe a few weeks later, guess what had happened? He had given it over to somebody else, passed it on to somebody else. Now, the explanation here is that it's not that he did not like it. He was basically using the spirit of giving, that if you see someone else who is in need and you don't have anything to give them, just give whatever it is that you can be able to give. Whatever, if it can't fulfill what you have in your hand, cannot fulfill your need, it must be your seed. So sow that seed to someone in someone else's life. And he passed it on. When I learned about that, I wasn't amused, I wasn't happy, and I'm not proud of that. But I was attached to the guy, and I was attached to the suit. What am I communicating? I'm saying that at the end of the day, when we do these acts of service and we are selfless and we're making contribution, we need to detach ourselves from it so that we're not looking forward to be paid in kind for our contribution. Let us just contribute and move on. Contribute and move on. It's another story I gotta tell you, but I don't have time. It's about a guy who used to take brought in a guy in his house, and they were living with him, and he would school him, took him to school, paid things about him for him, and so on. And so this host got an opportunity to go to the United States of America, and then when he came back, he demanded to see this guy, and this guy was already married and up and about in his businesses and so on. But this guy who hosted him, felt bad that he was calling for him to come and see him, and he didn't show up. The point is that the guy did not even give him a notice or something on that point. What I'm saying is that when we make our contributions on the face of the earth and we are selfless, there's no point of getting attached to it. There's no point of expecting to be paid back in kind or in whatever form for what we've contributed. Let's just contribute and move on. It's one of the biggest traits, liberating traits, that we can be able to make. Me and the example I've just used, the guy of the host who went to the US and came back, we were not liberated because we were probably not selfless. We need to be liberated. Let it go and release it and bless somebody else and move on. Tomorrow we're going to look at another form of benefit that you get when you are selfless in your life. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.